There's something really fascinating about Five Nights at Freddy's fan games to me. The last time I looked at one of these, it was Engraved Establishment, which was a pretty cool, if bare bones experience through and through. But it is far from the only one out there. I mean, there are literally hundreds, made by everyone from actual competent game developers to retards. Hey, speaking of retards, do you know what I miss in my Fnaf fan game experiences?
Bumming and forced suicide.
In February of 2018, the world was graced with Five Nights at Freddy's Dormitabis. No, I know what you're thinking. What the hell is a Dormitabis? Well, I did some extensive searching, and it turns out it's some gay Latin word for sleep. So we're already off to a bad start here. Latin is like the language of the privately educated, but moreover, the fucking game is called Sleep. In a fancy roundabout way, but still, who calls their game Sleep? What relevance could that possibly pose to anything at any point? What am I going to call my new FNAF fan game? Oh, I know, Eat. Oh, and then the sequel can be called Walk. And then, to round off the trilogy, I'll make But apparently I'm the only person to ever have any problem with this idiotic naming scheme. Probably because everyone else was too busy concerning themselves with the fact that the lead developer molests children. So let's get started, shall we? Compared to Engraved Establishment, Dormitabis feels much more at home with the typical Five Nights formula. You sit in an office and you try not to get your face munched off, as classic as a FNAF game can get, really. As cool as Engraved Establishment was, a FNAF game without that classic loop is a bit like the LGBT community without constantly shooting themselves in the foot. So now we're back on that old school grind, and seeing just what this little game has to offer.
Real nice.
That's stock creepypasta music in my FNAF game. The menu screen kind of sets the tone for the whole game. It is delightfully edgy to an utterly absurd degree. This game was made by someone who loves Jeff the Killer, and decided to make his FNAF game based on that. And you know what? I kinda dig it. The visuals of this game are honestly really fascinating to me. The character designs, the environments, there's an oddly amateurish bent to it, but not in a bad way, if that makes any sense at all. There's a very unsettling atmosphere to the whole thing, like we're stuck in some sort of hellish purgatory that just barely resembles the real world enough to be off-putting. Everything looks rotten, like you could contract every known disease and quite a few undiscovered ones just by sitting in the office doing nothing. In this current age of FNAF security breach and bummed as magical wonderland, I can honestly dig looking back at this game's pure, unrepentant edge. The game desperately wants to scare you, and whilst its attempts can come off as a bit laughable most of the time...
My god! This is most certainly beginning to be fun. There's this hot 15-year-old.
It's really charming, regardless. But anyway, how's the game itself? My first impressions would be jank. It's hard to explain, but there's a certain sluggishness to the controls that makes every action feel a little bit unreliable. An example is when dragging the map on the monitor screen. Sometimes it can feel a bit finicky, not to mention that it's kind of annoying in the first place, taking up the majority of the screen and requiring constant minimization. I never really had any major struggles with it, but it really feels like it could just decide to fail you at any time. Which, you know, isn't exactly ideal for a game where reactions can often be key. Plus, it's one of those FNAF games. You know, the ones that think it's funny to give you about 5,000 different stations to monitor at any one time. I say it like it's a complaint, but it just dropping you into the deep end does help with the sense of total claustrophobia and panic. Though, I guess it doesn't drop you entirely in deep. We do have a phone guy at least. Like any self-respecting FNAF game.
It appears I found you.
Okay, that's enough of that. So what's the basic deal? Well, following a delightful cutscene of some geezer hanging out in a dumpster like he's Debbie off of King of the Hill, we find ourselves in an office in this weird-ass place. Here we find ourselves having to survive not from 12 to 6, no, but from 10 to 7.
Daring today, aren't we?
But I do like the scaling of the time. It doesn't feel too long. A successful run is about 8 minutes, which is apparently slightly long by Fnaf game standards, but I didn't necessarily feel that when actually playing. It feels about right, at least for now. The only enemy, as far as I can tell for this night, is Havoc Freddy. He's beautiful. He's a fine enough starting bad guy. His route is pretty simple, going from camera 8 to 6 to 2 to the window to the door. The last 2 stages are accompanied by the very distinct sound effects. So he's not too bad to keep track of, at least for the time being. All you've got to do when he appears is head to the other side of the room, and then he, I don't know, feels awkward and leaves, like a trick-or-treater who only got chocolate instead of fentanyl. There's also a sound cue for him leaving, so for this first night you're in pretty good hands. Again, the hardest part may come from the jank of the controls accidentally getting you killed. I'm not sure if this was intentional, or bad luck, or a glitch, but it also seems as AI really ramps up towards the end of the night. On the final 2 encounters, he made it from cam 8 to window in about 10 seconds. Again, not too sure if this was intentional, but it does well for keeping the tension up. One of my least favourite things about most Fnaf games is how slow and meaningless the first night can be. Fnaf 3 probably takes the piss the most with this, since its first night has literally 0 threat, but most of the other games are also guilty of just being a boogie 2988 simulator in the first night. Hey, even Engraved Establishment had this issue with its early tower defense segments. The sudden ramp up in intensity near the end really helps keep the flow up, and it makes sure that even the first night feels pretty memorable. So let's wrap it up and move on. Night 2 introduces something that I find pretty interesting. Havoc Freddy is gone.
Oh no!
Instead of adding on to each night with more and more foes, we instead have to face new ones as they come. That's interesting. You know what isn't interesting? Am I real?
And that is the bear character I cannot identify. I have no idea what exactly he is, but it appears that the manifestation was somewhat fruitful. He seems to be glitching in and out of existence, which is why I dubbed him Am I Real? Clever, right?
That's retarded and you're retarded. All you do is stare at his decrepit form on camera for a bit until he goes back to normal, and that's it. That's all you do. He's just hanging out there like he's waiting to ask about your car's extended warranty for the time being, until he changes cameras with a very easily telegraphed voice line. Yeah, I feel you, buddy. You know that feeling when you accidentally make eye contact with someone you don't recognise on the street, and you just stare at each other for a minute until someone stops? I fucking hate that. We just caught this guy tweaking. He's probably a bit embarrassed. I don't blame him for needing a moment. It's a little annoying to have to linger on him every now and then, but as it turns out, you only have to be on the cameras he's on. The monitor doesn't even have to be on. Overall, he's a total joke when he's alone, which I suppose is why this night gives us the 1-2 punch of him and Havoc Chica. Chica plays pretty similarly to Freddy, moving along cameras 3, 4, 2 and 1, before arriving at the right door with a sound cue. All you've got to do is move to the front of the room and stare at her, then return to the monitor in time. Pretty basic stuff, but her presence does stop Night 2 from being a total snooze fest. Do you think this is how it felt to be a store owner in Minneapolis in 2020? Also brought up this night by the phone guy are the tapes. These are really the game's main collectibles, with each night having a tape scattered across a different camera. These tapes unlock some audio recordings in the extras menu, like it's the lost tapes from Payday 2 or something. And oh, those recordings. We will get to them soon, cause these things harbour the funniest and most controversial parts of this game simultaneously.
Top 15-year-old.
But I do like having some collectibles to spice up the gameplay. Reminds me of the secret minigames in Fnaf 3, and at least with Am I Real a virtual non-factor for most of the night, we have plenty of time to hunt the tape down this time. Am I Real? What a stupid fuck. I hope our phone guy dies just for that alone. Anyway, night 3. Right off the bat, we've got Freddy and Am I Real back to chill out, and on top of that, we've got a new guy, the Soul Cage. Oh well, aren't you an edgy one? Soul Cage doesn't seem to have any particular pattern that I can nail down. He seems to always start in camera 3, but from there it seems like he can turn out just about anywhere. What's important is where he shows up in the office. Soul Cage will appear on the ceiling, and in order to get rid of him, you just need to stare for a few moments until he disappears. Pretty simple, but I can honestly see this guy combo fucking you if he ever appears at the same time as Freddy or Chica. That could be a pain later on. I want to take a moment though to appreciate how, so far, every animatronic has a unique mechanic. Fnaf games, particularly the official ones, tend to struggle a bit with making its characters stand out. I talked about this in my original trilogy video, how 80% of FNAF 2's enemies do the exact same thing and are defeated in the exact same way. This was an issue in 1 too, with Bonnie and Chica virtually being clones of each other, and 3 only had one enemy anyway, so it hardly mattered there. Dormitabis' animatronics all have pretty simple mechanics, but they're all unique thus far. Hide at the far end of the room from Freddy, hide at the far end of the room and then stare at Chica, stare at Am I Real on the cameras, stare at Soul Cage on the ceiling. I mean, okay, there's a lot of variations of staring, like you're at the beach with Sydney Sweeney, but they all utilise different sections of the play space, and I really appreciate that. It makes every guy we face feel like a unique threat, unlike something like, I don't know, FNAF 2, where it can feel like Puppet, Foxy, Balloon Boy, and you know, then all the others. Let's see if they can keep that same momentum going into Night 4. So, our 4th night in this fucking crack shack has us facing off with Am I Real, Freddy, and Chica, alongside another new addition, the Havoc Puppet. Yeah, I'd say this guy is one of the 3 mascots of the game, alongside Am I Real and a character we'll get into soon enough.
Hot 15-year-old.
It's a really strong design, and one that you tend to see plastered over marketing material and such. Gameplay-wise, he starts on camera 2 and will go straight from there to the back window, signified by a distorted version of his theme from FNAF 2. All you gotta do is turn around and, you guessed it, stare at him until he pisses off to go and do heroin in the bathrooms, and then he'll return again eventually. Another simple but unique addition to the roster. I can see this game getting really goddamn tense once they start using all of the animatronics, which I'm sure will happen soon enough. You know, it's funny that Havoc Puppet is the Puppet analogue, given that, of all the characters, Am I Real actually feels like a better version of FNAF 2 Puppet. I know I called him a joke earlier, but just hear me out. In the compliment that could potentially work against the game, Dormitabis has some excellent sound design. So good that you can easily tell which animatronic has arrived in the office just off of the sound of their cues. This kind of design may render the cameras redundant. After all, if I just have to sit around and wait for sound cues, I should never have to bother with the cameras, right? That's the dilemma Scott had with FNAF 2, and the solution of the puppet was somewhat inelegant. Dormitabis fixes this with a fairly simple change. The fact that Am I Real can appear on any camera, I mean sure it's heavily telegraphed, but his presence alone, coupled with the collectible tapes and another character I'll get to in a moment, means that just about every camera is relevant. Again, a simple but effective solution to a problem that has plagued FNAF design for years. Seriously, why the fuck do people hate this game so much? It's rad. Oh, we'll get to that, I promise. For now though, Night 5. How bad could it possibly be? Okay, so Night 5 is a slight jump in difficulty, just a teeny bit. We're facing off against Am I Real again, Puppet, Soul Cage, and technically 2 new characters, although they work with one another. Havoc Foxy and Golden Cole.
It's me.
He said it!
So how do these lovely geezers work? Well, figuring that out is what did me in the most. Foxy kinda works like he did in FNAF 1. He'll start in stages and slowly move out of his stage. After reaching the final point, he'll trigger a Trojan attack. This is where Golden Cole decides to start being relevant. If you don't find the password to resolve the virus in time, well... Foxy will be holding up a randomised phrase on his board at this point. The longest word on it will be the password. After that, you're not done yet, this ain't church. Foxy starts moving fast, and you've got to move to the other side of the room and stare at the right hand side door to get him to leave. Pretty involved mechanics for this pair, but like FNAF 1, you can stall Foxy on his camera. That's actually how I beat this night on my successful attempt. It really adds to what I mentioned earlier about Am I Real being a better puppet. Now you've got to balance out finding Am I Real and stalling Foxy to the best of your abilities. The kitchen has well and truly heated up, boys. Also, I found this little Easter egg thing by accident.
There's gonna be a sign in there once the message reaches.
Pretty cool, although it muting your sound leaves you a sitting duck against Am I Real puppet and show cage. Death seems pretty inevitable at that point. But anyway, we've finished night 5, we've beat the game, right? I mean, maybe there's a couple bonus nights, but we've clawed through it, we've survived all 5 nights, and what the fuck do you mean we're only halfway through the campaign? Well, time to keep on keeping on. Unfortunately, Night 6 is probably the most disappointing one so far, in terms of the characters introduced, alongside the return of Am I Real, Freddy and Chica, but no Foxy or Golden Call thankfully. We get the Molten Evil and the BOA. Sadly, these two are the first characters to not really introduce anything new. The big organic Ashkenazi is literally just Chica, and Molten Evil has some cool properties in regards to his scream warping effect, but otherwise is counted in the exact same way as Soul Cage. These two are the final animatronics to be introduced aside from the final boss, so it's a shame that they're so mediocre in practice. I think it's a matter of scaling. The main campaign had 9 nights, 10 including the final boss fight that we'll get to soon, and its method of introducing characters allows for it to not feel like it drags on due to them being evenly dispersed. But if he really couldn't devise any unique mechanics, maybe the devs should have flown back from Little St. James for a few days to scrap Molten Evil and the bioengineered offshore Aboriginal, and reduce the night count to something like, I don't know, 7 or 8. I just find these two pretty disappointing, and I don't think their absence would be missed. They could have at least made Molten Evil a cameo Easter egg thing like the hang-up scene I showed earlier. That's just me, though. But hey, at least we get some interesting lore tidbits.
As you might have guessed, there's tapes in my dimension of this place as well. These contain memories that are obviously based on my past, which, just like yours, is heavily connected to Freddy's. That's why I'm in the same purgatory as you, I suppose. Every story has a beginning and an end. And then there's another part after the end. This little hidden epilogue that nobody expects. That, in this case, is this entire place.
So, we're in purgatory. That explains an awful lot, honestly. At least it's a good reason why these guys look so decrepit, and why so many of them seem to be incapable of just phasing through reality. It's a nightmarish hellhole, and we're just some poor bastard caught up in the heart of it all. Well, let's try to get the heck out of Dodge and go to heaven. Or hell, wherever it is we belong. The only way we can do that is by pushing forwards into the next night. Night 7 marks the first night without any new characters. From here on out, boys, it's all established mechanics, and we've got Am I Real, the Foxy Call duo, and Soul Cage to entertain us this time. Night 7 is easily the most tense night so far, and that is definitely due to the Call Am I Real combo takedowns. There were numerous instances on this night, both successful and where I had a damaged Am I Real spawn in at the exact same time the call came in, so I had to scramble to get the password, quickly swap to whatever camera Am I Real was on, and then run to take care of Foxy. On my successful attempt, I even got fucking triple teamed by those two plus Soul Cage entering the office at the same time. Downright heart-pumping, easily my favourite night in the game so far. Another thing that this night really gave me an appreciation for was the night complete screen. The fade to black and little jingle is the exact same as the one that plays before a jump scare. so for a few seconds you're left to ponder if you managed to survive or if you fucked up in the last moment. Very good little detail to ratchet up my blood pressure one last time before the end of the night. So nights 8 and 9 are pretty similar all in all, so I'm just lumping them together here. Putting them together really feels like the final test, having us face down the call combo and Am I Real in tandem with the other animatronics in various permutations. I think one of the more important parts of these nights comes from the story aspect though. 98's phone call alludes to a character who looks a bit like Am I Real, stalking the premises.
There's been something here. It came here with you. It's been hiding, but sometimes I think I've seen a glimpse of it. I think I must have just marked it off as Am I Real, since their costume texture appears to be really similar, but it's not him. I noticed that it makes way louder footsteps than Am I Real, so what I'm guessing is that this is something really, really big.
And the Night 9 call, as well as providing us a top tier performance from Peter.
Twists. Remember Garvey? Don't pretend you don't. He's here, and he's gonna erase all of us. I don't know why he is so massive, or what reason he still has to do harm to us.
And the Oscar goes to...
Also introduces the character Garvey by name, someone whom both Peter and John clearly know. It's pretty obvious that Garvey is our purple guy analog here, and the creature Phone Guy alludes to in 98 is most likely Springtrap. Oh yeah, Phone Guy is called Peter by the way.
All right, I see. Pedophile.
Who's a paedophile?
The clear setup for things to really heat up, and this is definitely carried through, as this is the final night of the main campaign that we get to see any of the regular gang for. From here on out, it's time to meet this Garvey fucker, and see if we can come out on top. Night 10 is, thus far, the most different night in the game, introducing the final enemy and our ultimate boss fight, Garvey, or as I call him, Springtrap after he messed with the provisional IRA. Here, the roles are completely different. Gareth has a fair few different mechanics, the complexity of which led to a fair few... So I'll break them down one by one. First off, the easiest stuff to combat. Throughout the night, you'll occasionally hear Garvey's laugh, pan to either the left, right, or both channels, stare at him in the left door if he's at the left, right door if he's at the right, and the ceiling if it's both. Pretty straightforward starting point, although I find it funny that he's the first animatronic who can actually be counted by the doors. I don't know, I guess he's just real shy. But that ain't all we've got to contend with, we've also got to deal with events. Yeah, throughout the game I sometimes noticed a vent camera option that was literally never used up until this night. Garvey will sometimes do a Bruce Willis, in which case you've got to click on the vent he's in to slow him down, run to the far end of the room and stare in the direction that he's coming from. Sometimes I would die when staring at him there, but I think it has something to do with having my cursor on him. He seems to leave me be when I left the cursor off at least. And then there's his final little mechanic. When not looking directly at him, the screen will start to darken. Honestly, I kind of ignored this mechanic. I think the idea is that you're incentivized to hunt Garvey down through the cameras to restore brightness, but the darkest it can get is still pretty manageable, and Garvey relies about 99% on sound cues, so like, why bother? It's much more optimal to stay on vent cams the whole night, and... See, that's a bit of the good old clunky difficulty tweaks I was talking about earlier. The devs managed to circumvent it pretty tastefully with Golden Call, Foxy and Am I Real, creating a distinct and fair challenge. But this is a very Scott Cawthon-esque case of adding a complication that can easily be ignored. You know, I actually found more challenge from a feature that was probably not meant to add it. Throughout the night, Garvey will address the player. I really like this. It adds to his character, particularly as he starts off cocky and gets more desperate as the night goes on. It really feels like he's clinging to his last hope at victory as his chances get slimmer and slimmer.
At first I will look for this, and now this thirst will leave me. This need for bloodshed. Let yourself to me.
It gives him a bit more personality, even if it's sometimes a bit...
No, this is nostalgic. Last time we were here, you in the air phantoms.
And the Oscar goes to...
Anyway, the thing is, his dialogue can actually kind of complicate the fight for me, as it makes it much harder to hear his laugh, especially when it's on the same side the voice is coming from. But all men must fall, and as we finally complete the night, we're greeted to a cutscene, where we're dining on some fine heart thing, I think, when we're prompted to look back. Oh shit! Let's get the fuck out of here, John. As we do so, however, we're chased down by Garvey, and we have to do a QTE to escape. Whoa, calm down, Resident Evil 4. After that, we're greeted with the optimistically titled Bad Ending. Who the fuck puts that on a tombstone? Also, his surname is Wright? Fucking hell. I don't know why, but it's really funny to me seeing all these people credited by their gay online handles instead of proper names. So, that's the main campaign, but it's far from the end of the story. I mean, it would be lazy if I ended here, and I am, but look, only 1 star. We won't stand for that around these parts, and that ending we got didn't seem very jolly to me. So let's click on the extras menu and see what we've got. Quite a few options. In fact, I'm willing to bet that when all is said and done, roughly 40% of the game is locked behind this menu, including the true ending. We've got an animatronic viewer, which is cool, a jump scare viewer, which is cool, but then we get some actual interesting stuff. The tape section is where we can view all the tapes collected through the night. A bunch of shit I haven't unlocked yet, a night 11 called Nightmare, and the best feature to ever appear in a Fnaf game. Seriously, being able to select any night you want to replay is awesome, and it's particularly great for hunting down the final few tapes I hadn't managed to snatch up on my first go. Speaking of the tapes, I think we've put this off enough. Let's delve into these tapes and see what it is about Dormitabis that is so very controversial. After all, we need the tapes to 100% the game. How bad could it be?
Talk 15-year-old. The doors in the back room is soundproof, and nobody heard them scream in pain as I cut them up with my knife. Talk 15-year-old. I can't have anyone interrupt my plans. All of John's friends are dead. Talk 15-year-old.
Oh my. Garvey's a bit of an edgy boy, isn't he? But moreover than that, the big controversy comes from the fact that he rapes children. Like father, like son. People got pretty upset about this. After all, you can't have rape in your FNAF game. Child murder is fine, but I draw the line at rape. Though, I think this is a case of people being more harsh in retrospect, since I found some old Reddit posts where barely anybody seemed to care about the rape outside of one guy who seemed to find it more funny in a tryhard way than anything else, which to be honest I tend to agree with. This game's plot is about a mutant person who kills and rapes children in no particular order, and then records tapes cackling like a 14-year-old who just got banned off Xbox for calling the GTA Online sweater.
I said GG 5 times, and now I'm banned from playing this stupid game for 72 hours. Come on, game.
How can you not find that hilarious? I mean, you've gotta laugh at the tryhard edginess of it all. I've also found some people saying Scott has explicitly forbid rape in FNAF fan games, but I'm yet to find any evidence of this, and the original release of Dormitabis remains up to this day, despite blatantly violating those rules, and the fact that Scott isn't above striking down fan games if he feels they contain undesirable aspects. Yeah, it's a bit less funny, now that we know the rider was probably getting his rocks off to it, but in isolation, I just don't see how you could be mad at this. It's too charmingly tryhard, I'm sorry. But I'll discuss the story more later, since it will come up during our quest to get the true ending. For now, let's delve into Night 11, or Nightmare Mode. It's an interesting night, an interesting fight, and by that I mean hard and full of damn spite. Well, that may be because I'm a retard, by any and all regard, and every time I fail, it's on my own petard. For those first 8 hours, the robots hold the power, and we're besieged from all sides till my fierce fate avire. The whole gang is present, the bear to the pheasant, and even the fox which I ever so resent. But then you hit 5, and we switch up the jive, because Garvey is back to try burn his hard drive. So we battle the trap, keep our eyes on the map, cause if he does catch us, he'll give us the clap. And once we come near that oil we hold dear, I beat the stupid thing and I feel like a silly individual. I don't know why the fuck I did any of that. In all seriousness, Night 11 makes for a fun challenge. It's definitely the hardest so far, I'd say the hardest overall thing in the game, but it was really satisfying to beat, though I think it does expose a small weakness with Garvey's design. The hard part of Night 11 is getting to the Garvey segment, which triggers at 5 AM and removes all of the animatronics aside from him. Balancing out everyone from Foxy to Am I Real to the puppet to Soul Cage to the bastard offspring of Al-Assad is the real challenge of the night, and going from that to just one enemy in the final encounter, it feels more like a victory lap than anything else. But hey, at least we get this lovely image. Did I mention Garvey bums children? Because Garvey bums children.
Hot 15-year-old.
But far from done we are, my friends. Night 11 didn't have a tape, since we've already collected them all. What it did have instead was a key, and after beating the knight, we get a little cutscene from this puppet-looking bastard, telling us to find all of them. But uphill grind, you handsome devil. Where do we do that, I hear you ask? Well, it's back to night 10 to find the second key. God knows that I wasn't going to do the whole thing again, so I just grabbed the key and Alt F forward. And with it, we unlock... well, fucking nothing really, because we've got to listen to the 10th tape first. Fine, give me a couple minutes.
That's it. He's dead. Something inside the yellow bear suit. But John's still alive. I don't know how long it will take me to find him, but I will. And he will not like what happens next.
Oh my. Oh, isn't that sweet? So here we're introduced to a game mode called the Cardboard Theatre. Now, I got very excited to see a rendition of Streetcar Named Desire with the Fnaf cast, and in a sense we did get that. It has the paedophilia and women beating at least. Tennessee would be proud. This is definitely a very story-focused little thing, giving us some more insight to Garvey's reign of terror, including an explanation for that bloke hanging out in the bin we saw at the very beginning of the game. The presentation is kind of fun, but my favourite part has to be the bit where he plays some jackass to put a child in Golden Freddy's mouth. This is peak storytelling. The only other thing I really have to say about this minigame outside of a story context is that while I was playing, the Angry Birds rap began playing through my headphones, which kind of sullied the immersion a bit. Oh, and whoever invented mechanics where you just have to smash your finger off the space bar needs to be executed, preferably via one of those old Viking berserker methods. Anyway, at least it's all over now. Oh, fuck off. Well, let's just get on with this. You gotta be fucking kidding me. Okay, so it seems that there are still layers to go, and I'm not gonna lie here, I checked out a bit at this point. There was nothing left to collect in any of the nights, no secrets in the Cardboard Theatre, nothing in any of the tapes or challenges, but then I noticed something. Click on Am I Real, huh? I'm genuinely embarrassed by how much of a dopey spastic I am, but I didn't even see this coming until like an hour after trying everything else. Turns out, to get access, we need to do the secret Am I Real minigame, which is done by clicking on his nose in the character select screen, and then continuing to spam click him until he turns into the slaphead behind the Sainsbury's petrol station. Then, he freshens up, jump scares us, and we've got access to Night 12, or as the game calls it, Cake Bear's Night. This better be fucking worth it. Okay, so Night 2 isn't what I expected at all. We're in a completely different building with a completely different set of mechanics. Presumably this is the eponymous Cake Bears. You know, a lot of this game's art direction goes down the drain when it has to create something that looks inhabitable. I don't know, the game's slapdash art style works way better when it's depicting a rotting, hellish purgatory and not a normal everyday location. It just looks a bit cheap and tacky here. Shame. I mean, it's still better environmental design than Security Breach. Anyway, we've got two geezers here. Our main threat for the night is Am I Real before he got on the heroin. He'll travel between the 3 cameras throughout the night and eventually show up in your office. When he does that, you've just got to flip the camera up until he goes away, like you're trying to avoid making eye contact with the tramp outside of the Tesco Express by looking at your phone. We've all done it. Sounds pretty easy, right? Well, we have 2 mechanics to circumvent that. The first is for our second enemy of the night, the puppet. Every handful of seconds he'll attach himself to one of the cameras, and if you ignore him for too long, he'll crash the camera system, where they will then take 2.5 years to reboot. During this time, Am I Real will probably end up killing you. The second complication is that this monitor was apparently made by Huawei or something, because its power drains in seconds, forcing you to wait out the recharge, and during which time you can't fend off Puppet or Am I Real. To be honest with you, this doesn't necessarily feel like the final challenge of the game. Even though it's necessary to get 100%, it feels more like a little bonus that the developers slapped together for fun. It's nowhere near as tricky as Night 11, or hell, even the leap in difficulty from Nights 4 to 5, but the fast pace does make for a tense little experience, especially in the final IO when the music starts picking up and getting faster and faster. My personal strategy was to wait for the battery to reach max before checking all 3 cameras in quick succession. If Puppet is present on a camera, you'll hear his sound cue first before the video even fades in, so you can start staring at him once away. As soon as the static shows up, you're safe to flick the camera back down, which is pretty important given that you probably only have a split second left before the battery dies. You rinse and repeat this cycle the whole night. Once Cake Bear appears in anywhere other than the door, you simply bring up the cams. In my experience, he won't leave or attack from the door, and this is merely his wind-up phase before he enters, so don't bother wasting battery when he's there. If you get hit with the puppet whilst he's in the room, there's no need to panic, as it seems to take roughly the same amount of time for both Am I Real and the puppet to leave, so it's very easy to sync them up and only have to drop the cameras once it's all clear. Like most of Dormitabis, the loop isn't difficult, but it's all about being able to keep your reactions up over an extended period of time, and not losing your nerve. But alas, with Night 12 completed, we're greeted with this box thing, and upon opening it, we're presented with these poorly written newspaper clippings that give us the final pieces to the story. Most importantly, that Garvey and Peter are related to John. And from there... I would say this got me emotional, but that's more owed to the fantastically melancholic soundtrack that they pinched from Fnaf 3. So that's more or less everything that there is to Dormitabis. Well, aside from one thing. That's right, lads, it's time for another uphill grind Fnaf story breakdown. Maybe this one will be slightly less wrong, but it probably won't be. So, Dormitabis follows a group of brothers, Garvey, Peter and Alex Wright. Now, Garvey has a few problems kicking around, mostly that he's fucking mental, but also because he is a literal purple mutant man. 5G airwaves, right? Also, in 1969, another member of the Wright family called John is born. It's unclear exactly what his relationship is outside of him probably being the youngest of the family. Either way, Alex decides to found an animatronic restaurant known as Cake Bear's Diner, and things go well for a while, until 1982, when Garvey, who goes mad from being made fun of by John, a little 13-year-old by the way, for his appearance, decides to kill a child in his basement and shove him in the bin behind the establishment. The body is found and this leads to the place shutting down. The following year, Alex rebrands as Freddy's Family Diner, and all goes well until Garvey decides to rape a 15-year-old child to death and shove her in one of the animatronics. This, understandably, brings a bit of heat down on the establishment, and it really doesn't help when Garvey pays some teenagers to manslaughter a child.
Oh my god, incredible! It took $5 to make a teen put his little brother into the mouth of the Fredbear suit!
Cheap prick. This causes Fredbear's to close down and then rebrand again as Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Garvey does what Garvey does best and lures and murders more children. However, in 1987, a security guard called Fritz becomes suspicious, and so Garvey murders him and hides him in the Cake Bear character suit to cover up his actions. At this time, he also intends to murder his relative John. However, before he can enact anything, Garvey's arrested in 1993. I don't know why he just decided to wait 6 years between killing Fritz and trying to go after John, but that's how it goes. Peter bails him out of jail, but it's obvious that he knows the truth, so Garvey kills him and hides him in the Golden Call suit. Freddy's closes down for good. Somewhere between 1993 and 2017, Garvey ends up dying, and then in 2017, John too pops his clogs. It's unclear as to why exactly, since he wasn't even 50 when he died, but either way, he ends up in purgatory with Peter, the souls of the 9 dead children, and Garvey. After 9 nights in purgatory, he comes face to face with Garvey, who's been attempting to hunt down and kill his victims again, and has successfully done so to Peter. John, meanwhile, is able to beat him. Depending on your interpretation, John either escapes purgatory and ascends to heaven, or is killed by Garvey and ends up spending the rest of his life in purgatory. In the process, however, it seems that he was able to rip Garvey's heart out somehow and thus condemn him to hell, allowing the souls of the dead children to all reach heaven. You know, this game's story gets a lot of flack, and it is retarded, but like, it's not any more retarded than mainline Fnaf. Garvey is an edgy moron who kills and rapes people because he gets bullied for being a mutant. But like, don't tell me with a straight face that William Afton's motives are any less fucking ridiculous. And as for the rape, I mean, that's it? That's it? That's what all the fuss is about. One of Garvey's murders had a sexual element that is mentioned, not explicitly shown, exactly twice, and that's all. The way people talk about this game, you'd think he was on the flight logs or something. Garvey is an absurd, poorly written bad guy, but come on. I mean, I made a whole video about Amos Vol, and that shit was so much more distressing and blatant than anything here. The Shield was more shocking and edgy on a weekly basis, and it's still peak television. Sometimes people need to put stuff into perspective. A remake of the game came out a while back, and even though it introduced numerous balance and gameplay changes, both for better and for worse, the only thing people ever talk about is it removing these brief references. It's just completely ridiculous. I don't like assuming people's intentions because I'm not a bread tuber, but I do wonder if a lot of people who criticise it have even played the game, if they even realise how insignificant the rape detail is in the overall grand scheme of the story and game as a whole. We live in the age where most people will just flip on a YouTube video and get all their opinions from that, and I can't help but feel like a lot of these videos overstate the point a bit. Again, back when the game first released, nobody seemed to be all that bothered, so I almost think it's a case of people parroting their favourite YouTuber with very little context beyond that. Though, there is a slightly less funny undercurrent to all of this, and I'd be remiss to not at least mention it. Time for the elephant in the room. Or the DJ in the BBC studio in this case. I've joked about it all throughout this video, but in 2020, writer and project lead of Dormitabis, Blackout, was accused of quite a bit of sexual impropriety around children as well as... Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, okay, let me lay this out, because I'm sick of this. If you ever mention stuff like racism and transphobia in the same breath that you're using to report on paedophilia, you have a fucking dent in your head. Yeah, that stuff is bad and all, but all you're doing by bringing it up is trivializing the actual important allegations. I mean, who fucking cares if Blackout called someone a tranny? He was allegedly chatting up kids. It's like if you were in court and you were being charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of being a big meanie. It's laughable, and all it does is erode your credibility by showing that you have no sense of priority with these things. It's just ridiculous. I don't like any of that stuff. Anyway, Blackout fled the internet soon after the allegations hit, and hasn't really been seen since. In regards to Dormitabis, these accusations do shed a very unfortunate light on the game's story, which has led to further accusations that Garvey is a self-insert fantasy character for Blackout. This is something I cannot speak to, but it absolutely does make Garvey's edgelord rambling a bit less funny if true. It's just a tricky situation all around. The way I see it, Dormitabis is a free game. You can download it right now from GameJolt without spending a penny. Even then, I'd say the almighty Lolly summed this up best.
Did anyone see the Freddie Mercury movie, Bohemian Rhapsody? Yeah, that one. The one that was nominated for an Academy Award? That was made by a pedophile.
Do you have the slightest idea how little that narrows it down?
Bryan Singer has been accused multiple times of going to parties with underage boys. Something that he almost brags about. Well, alright, you don't have to watch that. Let's just watch The King's Speech instead. That's a fantastic movie. But it was released by the Weinstein Company, owned by Harvey Weinstein, the guy that was caught manipulating women for sex. Essentially the father of the Me Too movement. Well, alright, that's pretty bad. Well, let's go ahead and sit down and watch some iCarly, some good old classic Nickelodeon. Alright, Dan Schneider. Fuck this sleazebag, let's not do that. Let's watch Chinatown by the great Roman Polanski. Alright, yeah, Roman Polanski. Fuck. So we can't do that either. Well, you know what? We're not going to do any movies. Instead, we're going to sit down and drink a Coke. Shit. You guys get what I mean now? Yeah, every single thing you touch or enjoy is in some way tied to a sleazebag.
But Blackout is not getting anything out of this. The most he can get from you playing Dormitabis in 2025 is internet clout, which hardly matters since he's gone into hiding in the mountains of Afghanistan or wherever. Not only this, but Blackout only led the project and wrote the story. Out of everyone, the lead programmer Owntrick deserves props as the guy behind the best parts of the game. Blackout was one piece of the puzzle, and I think tossing out the whole game does a disservice to the others who put together what is probably one of my favourite things to come out of Fnaf, even if it's not an officially licensed project. Seriously, just give it a go. If you like it, you like it, and if you don't, then you don't. But I'd really rather not have such a strong little title have its legacy forever devastated by a few tetchy lines of dialogue and a dodgy project lead. Art and artist and all that, Anyway, thanks very much for watching, and maybe I'll see you again at some point this year. Take care.
Hot 15-year-old.